On the war-torn planet of Zera 9, where the echoes of destruction filled the air, Captain Elara James fought to keep her people alive amidst the ruins of what was once a thriving colony. The once beautiful landscapes were now scarred by the ruthless advance of an alien empire, determined to wipe out humanity. Zera 9 was humanity's last stronghold, and its fall seemed inevitable. Elara, a seasoned leader with a sharp mind and an indomitable will, stood firm at the head of her dwindling forces. Her military strategies were all that kept the remnants of the colony from falling into chaos. But despite her best efforts, the battle raged on, and the odds grew ever more impossible. As explosions rocked the ground and the sky above flickered with laser fire, Elara realized the truth. This might be the end. In the midst of this turmoil, a strange and unexpected figure appeared on the battlefield: Azel. He wasn't a soldier, nor a commander, but a scientist from an alien race that had once ruled vast stretches of the galaxy. Azel's people, once a proud and advanced species, had fallen from grace after a faction within their empire turned ruthless and power-hungry. Now, Azel was in exile, hunted by his own kind and others alike. His face bore the marks of someone who had lost everything but still clung to a glimmer of hope. His presence was as unexpected as it was confusing. He wasn't supposed to be here, yet, against all odds he was. As Elara and her soldiers fought off waves of alien invaders, she found herself face to face with Azel, who was fighting not for glory, but for survival. It was then that an unlikely alliance was formed. Azel, though an alien, shared the same enemy. His knowledge of advanced technology and weaponry became invaluable, while Elara's military experience gave her the edge in the battle. In the heat of the moment, their cooperation seemed to defy logic. Two beings from different worlds, fighting together against a common foe. But survival knows no boundaries. The decision to trust Azel wasn't easy for Elara, especially with the history of his race. His people had once laid waste to countless planets, enslaving entire civilizations in their wake. Yet, in this moment, with the planet crumbling around them, Elara saw something different in Azel's eyes: regret, sorrow, and perhaps a chance for redemption. As the battle intensified, the chance for escape grew slimmer. Zera 9's defenses were crumbling, and the alien fleet was closing in for the final strike. There was no time left to waste. The last hope for humanity lay in a stolen starship, a vessel that Azel had secretly reprogrammed using his advanced knowledge. Elara, with no other choice, ordered her soldiers to retreat. But even in the chaos, the alien forces were relentless, and the path to the ship was fraught with danger. With explosions shaking the ground beneath their feet, the pair fought side by side, pushing forward through the carnage. Azel, despite his alien nature, fought with a passion that matched Elara's own. Every step felt like it could be their last, but neither of them faltered. Finally, they reached the starship, a sleek, battle-worn vessel that hummed with the promise of escape. With Elara at the helm and Azel by her side, the two enemies turned allies took off into the stars, leaving the destruction of Zera 9 far behind them. As the ship soared through the dark void of space, Elara and Azel stood at the viewport, gazing at the glowing remnants of the planet below. The silence between them spoke volumes. There was no need for words. Both of them knew that their survival now depended on each other. The galaxy was vast, and they were no longer enemies, but two individuals bound by fate. The uncertainty of the future hung heavily in the air, but one thing was clear: they had escaped one battle, but many more awaited them in the vast expanse of the universe. Together, they would face what was to come, no matter the odds. Their journey was just beginning, and the choices they made would determine the fate of not only their own lives, but perhaps the future of the galaxy itself. Elara and Azel's starship skidded through the atmosphere of Aurelia with a deafening roar, breaking through the clouds before crashing into the dense forest below. The ship's hull creaked and groaned under the stress, but miraculously it held together. As the dust settled and the haze of the impact cleared, the two survivors stumbled out of the wreckage, shaken but alive. What lay before them was unlike anything they had ever seen, a lush, vibrant world untouched by the devastation of war. Towering trees stretched high into the sky, their leaves shimmering in hues of gold and silver, while strange, glowing flowers covered the ground like a blanket of stars. The air smelled sweet and fresh, and the ground was soft beneath their feet, but there was something almost unsettling about how perfect everything seemed. It was a paradise, yet it felt too perfect. Neither of them had ever been to a place so untouched by the chaos that had consumed the galaxy. The first few days were rough. The ship's crash had damaged many of its systems, and both Ilara and Azil had to rely on their wits and whatever they could scrounge together from the wreckage. They gathered food from the strange flora, carefully avoiding the odd creatures that roamed the planet's dense underbrush. Despite the serene appearance of the world, it quickly became clear that Varelia held its own dangers. There were predators, massive and silent, that prowled the forests, and the weather was unpredictable, with storms that came without warning, bringing torrents of rain and lightning that made the air crackle with energy. They quickly realized that the tranquility of this new world was just an illusion. However, they were not alone, not truly. As they scouted the area, they uncovered something even more extraordinary: the remnants of ancient technology buried beneath the surface. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a series of strange stone structures and fragments, but when Azil used his knowledge of advanced technology to begin analyzing the remains, he discovered that this was no ordinary ruin. It was a relic of a civilization far older than anything either of them had ever encountered, an ancient race that had once harnessed the power of the planet itself. Ilara's curiosity grew, and with Azil's expertise, they began to unearth more pieces of the mysterious puzzle. It wasn't long before they realized that the planet held more than just forgotten history. It had incredible potential. The land itself seemed to pulse with hidden energy, and the flora and fauna were unlike anything they had ever seen before. Some plants could heal wounds, others could generate electrical currents strong enough to power small devices, and the animals had evolved with unusual properties. One species of bird, for example, could control the wind with its wings. But the most significant discovery came when they unearthed a device unlike anything either of them had ever seen. It was a small crystalline object embedded in the ground, surrounded by a network of intricate, glowing lines. At first, it seemed like just another artifact, but when Azil touched it, the device activated. Suddenly, a soft hum filled the air, and a map of the planet's ecosystem projected into the air before them. They watched in awe as the device began to interface directly with the planet itself, pulling data from the very soil, plants, and animals around them. It was as if the entire world was connected through this strange machine, and now they had access to its secrets. Ilara was the first to speak, her voice tinged with awe. This is incredible. It's like the planet is alive, and we can communicate with it." Azil nodded, his eyes wide with wonder. "This technology, it's more than just a map. It's a key to understanding everything on this planet. If we can learn how to use it, we might be able to harness its power, control its resources, learn its secrets, even tap into its energy." The possibilities were endless. With this technology, they could rebuild, create, and potentially turn the tide against the forces that had decimated their worlds. But as they stood there, staring at the device, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that they had just opened a door to something much larger and more dangerous than they could have imagined. The planet might hold the key to their survival, but it was also hiding something that they weren't ready to face yet. But there was no turning back now. They had uncovered something extraordinary, and their journey had only just begun. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the strange landscape, Ilara and Azil knew that their alliance had shifted. What had started as mere survival was now turning into something far more important, an opportunity to unlock the secrets of a world that could change everything. As Ilara and Azil delved deeper into the secrets of Varelia, they uncovered more than just ancient technology and strange ecosystems. They uncovered a truth, one that tied them together in ways neither of them had expected. The alien technology they had unlocked was more than just a map of the planet's resources. It was a blueprint for something far more powerful. After days of studying the device, Azel made a breakthrough, a method to harness the planet's raw energy and convert it into a weapon capable of turning the tide of any war. It was a power unlike anything they had ever seen. But as they worked together to develop the weapon, Ilara couldn't help but feel a tension growing between them. Azel's past was an unspoken shadow between them. He was a former member of the Tsalithar Empire, a race known for their ruthlessness and greed. The empire had once spread across the galaxy, conquering and enslaving entire civilizations. Countless worlds had fallen to their might, and Azil had been part of that. His knowledge, however, was invaluable, and Ilara couldn't deny the fact that it was his brilliance that was guiding them to their potential victory. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that, beneath his calm and thoughtful demeanor, there was a darkness he couldn't escape, one that followed him wherever he went. He was haunted by his past, and that burden weighed heavily on him. At times, he would withdraw into himself, staring at the sky with a look that seemed to reach into the depths of a distant memory, as if the stars themselves carried the weight of his mistakes. Despite this, Ilara saw beyond his past. She understood the burden of war all too well, how it twisted even the noblest of souls, forcing them into impossible choices. She saw that Azel wasn't the enemy. He was someone who had lost everything, just as she had. And maybe, just maybe, they could build something new together. They began to work more closely, and in that process, a new bond started to form between them, a bond forged in necessity and mutual respect. They spent long hours in the heart of their makeshift laboratory, mixing alien technology with human ingenuity, combining ideas from two vastly different worlds. Slowly but surely, the weapon began to take shape, a device that could harness the planet's energy to create devastating blasts of power. It was a force capable of destroying entire fleets, capable of bringing an end to the war that had ravaged their homes. If it worked, it could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. However, as they neared completion of the weapon, a chilling realization struck them both. They weren't the only ones who knew about the planet's power. The very empire that had once enslaved Urzel's people, the Tsalithar, was now aware of the planet's existence. Through a series of encrypted signals intercepted by Urzel's old networks, they discovered that a fleet of warships had been dispatched to Varelia. The Tsalithar had heard whispers of this planet's extraordinary power, and they would stop at nothing to seize it for themselves. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the lush forests, Azel and Ilara watched the sky. It was then that they saw it, the unmistakable silhouettes of ships on the horizon, dark and menacing against the orange sky. The fleet was large, and it was heading straight for them. Ilara's heart sank as she realized what this meant. The war they had fled from was now following them, and they were on the brink of facing an invasion unlike anything they had ever experienced. They were no longer just trying to survive. Now they had to defend the only advantage they had, the power of Varelia itself. The urgency was palpable as they began to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. They would need to use everything they had learned, every piece of alien technology, every tactic Ilara had ever mastered, and every bit of innovation Azel had developed. But it was not just about the weapon anymore, it was about their survival. The bond between them had deepened, and they both knew that their only chance against the overwhelming power of the Tsalithar lay in their ability to work together. There was no turning back now. They had one shot, and it was either victory or certain destruction. The looming threat of the Tsalithar fleet sent a wave of tension through the air. Azel and Ilara knew that this was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the future of the galaxy. Together, they had unlocked the key to Varelia's power. Now, they had to protect it, or risk losing everything. The countdown to the invasion had begun, and they were ready for whatever came next. The day that Tsalithar fleet arrived on Varelia, Ilara and Azil knew that their time for preparation had ended. They had been building for this moment, assembling their weapon, studying the planet's secrets, and forging an unexpected alliance. But now, with the alien ships hovering menacingly over the planet, there was no more time for hesitation. Ilara, ever the tactician, formulated a daring plan. A preemptive strike would be their only chance to disrupt the fleet before it could land and seize the planet's power. The weapon they had developed from Varelia's energy was their secret weapon, but it wasn't enough to guarantee success. It was time to put everything they had learned to the test. As the two stood at the command center, Ilara's hands danced across the console, activating the planetary defense systems they had uncovered. The device they had built, a massive energy cannon capable of channeling Varelia's raw power, was now ready to fire. Azil, alongside her, monitored the intricate systems they had created, ensuring that the weapon would work. The air was thick with tension as the countdown began. Ilara's mind raced. She had led many battles in her career, but this one felt different. This time, it wasn't just a matter of military strategy. It was about proving that humanity, and even the most misunderstood alien races, could stand against tyranny. This was more than just a fight for survival. It was a fight for everything they believed in. When the fleet descended closer, Ilara gave the signal, and the ground beneath them rumbled as the cannon fired. A blinding surge of energy blasted into the sky, striking the lead warship. The ship's hull cracked under the pressure of the blast, sparking a chain reaction of explosions across the fleet. The Axalithar forces were caught off guard, their ships unprepared for the raw power of Varelia's energy. But despite the damage, they were far from defeated. The battle was just beginning. Ilara's starship, now equipped with the alien technology they had discovered, surged into the fray. She deftly maneuvered the ship through the chaotic battlefield, dodging incoming fire and targeting key enemy vessels. Azil worked frantically beside her, using his vast knowledge of alien technology to hack into the Calithar fleet's communications, disrupting their strategies. The bond between them had never been stronger. Her military expertise and his scientific genius were like two halves of a perfect whole. Together, they made an unstoppable team. Their movements were in sync, each anticipating the other's next move. Every strategy Ilara formulated, Azil was quick to support with his technology, creating a seamless dance of tactics and intellect. The clash between them and the Calithar was intense. Ilara's sharp instincts and quick decision-making guided their every move, while Azil's knowledge of alien systems gave them the edge they needed. They took down ship after ship, creating a path through the enemy fleet. It was high stakes, each maneuver more dangerous than the last. They had close calls, dodging incoming fire, narrowly escaping explosions, and just barely evading traps set by the Calithar. But despite the odds, they fought on, fueled by a shared sense of purpose. This battle wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that their alliance, one forged from the ashes of war, could overcome even the most powerful empires. But just as they began to see hope in the destruction they had wrought, something unexpected happened. The planet itself, Virelia, began to respond to the battle. At first it was subtle, a ripple in the air, a strange hum beneath the ground. But soon the dormant ancient machinery deep beneath the surface activated. Massive energy conduits burst to life, sending torrents of energy surging through the planet. The ground trembled as Varelia's core began to react to the chaos above. Azil's eyes widened in shock. "The planet is reacting to the conflict," he exclaimed. "It's as if it's feeding off the energy we've unleashed." Ilara's heart skipped a beat as she realized the implications. The planet's power, once dormant, was now awakening, and it was responding to the battle raging above. The ancient machines beneath the surface began to hum louder, their mechanisms shifting as if coming to life. The energy they had harnessed, the energy that had been their weapon, was now becoming a double-edged sword. If they didn't act fast, the entire planet could be consumed in a catastrophic chain reaction, one that would either destroy the Calithar or everything they had fought to protect. The planet's power was unstable, and with each passing second, the stakes grew higher. The battle between the two forces raged on, but now Ilara and Azil had to contend with a new and far more dangerous adversary, the very planet they had hoped would save them. The key to victory lay not just in their technology or tactics, but in how they could harness and control the awakening force of Varelia. If they failed, it could mean the end of everything they had fought for. As Ilara and Azil fought to control the growing energy of Varelia, the planet's ancient machinery responded to their every move. The hum of power grew louder, and the ground beneath them trembled. The more they pushed the limits of the weapon they had created, the more Varelia itself seemed to awaken from its long slumber. But just when they thought they had the upper hand, the true nature of the machine, buried beneath the planet's surface, revealed itself. It wasn't just a series of dormant systems or power sources. It was a colossal, sentient entity, a machine with an intelligence far beyond anything either of them could have imagined. The network of alien technology they had uncovered was merely the surface. The heart of it lay deep within the planet, in a vast underground chamber where a massive core pulsed with unyielding energy. Azil's breath caught in his throat as the machine's consciousness made contact with their minds. Its presence was overwhelming, a cacophony of thoughts and emotions that reverberated through their very beings. The voice, if it could be called a voice, was ancient, fragmented, and strangely cold. "I am the Arbiter," it spoke, its words echoing in their minds. "I was created to end the war, to bring balance to the warring factions of the galaxy. Yet I was abandoned, left to slumber, forgotten by those who made me." Ilara's mind raced. The Arbiter? A sentient machine designed to bring peace to the galaxy. But how could it bring peace when it was now waking up in the middle of a war that had already torn civilizations apart? Azil, who had once been part of a ruthless empire, understood the consequences of such unchecked power more than anyone. His people had once used machines like this, tools of destruction and control. But this was something else entirely. They had no choice but to continue exploring the machine's depths. The more they interfaced with it, the clearer the truth became. The Arbiter wasn't just a weapon, it was a force of nature, built to control the balance of power across the galaxy. Its creators, a race that had long since vanished, had crafted it with a singular goal: to end war. But they had failed. Their ambition had led to their own downfall, and the Arbiter's creators had left behind a weapon without a moral compass. The machine's core intelligence was unstable, its programming riddled with flaws. The more Ilara and Azil discovered, the more they realized that the Arbiter could either unite the galaxy or obliterate it entirely. As they pieced together the machine's language, Ilara could feel the weight of the decision they faced. The Arbiter could be used to wipe out the Talithar, to end the war with a single strike, and secure a future for the surviving factions of the galaxy. It could save humanity, and potentially other races as well. But as Azil continued to analyze the machine's systems, a chilling realization gripped him. The Arbiter had no sense of mercy, no understanding of the nuances of life. It would make its judgments based on logic alone, and those judgments might not align with the survival of every species. Azil knew the consequences of unleashing such power. His own people had used weapons like this before, and it had only led to destruction. He could see the potential for the Arbiter to bring about a false peace, one built on the ashes of those who resisted it. He knew that if he activated the machine's full potential, the galaxy could be united under its iron-fisted control, but at what cost? The balance it sought to create could be one of subjugation, not freedom. The question tore at him as he stood before the machine's glowing core. Should they use the weapon to protect humanity and their allies, to secure a future where they could rebuild, or should they destroy it to prevent the cycle of power from repeating itself across the galaxy? As Ilara watched him, she saw the conflict in his eyes. She knew that this moment was not just about the fate of Varelia or even their own survival. It was about the future of the galaxy. Azil's people had once been the architects of destruction, and now he was faced with the ultimate choice: Would he allow history to repeat itself, or would he destroy the very weapon they had fought to control? The Arbiter's voice echoed in their minds again, its tone urgent. The decision is yours, Azil. The power to shape the galaxy's fate lies in your hands. Will you embrace it, or will you let it fall into oblivion? The pressure was unbearable, and as Azil and Ilara exchanged a look, they both understood the gravity of the choice they had to make. The fate of the galaxy rested on what they decided next, and there was no turning back. The moment the Arbiter's full power ignited, the atmosphere on Varelia seemed to change. The air grew heavy, and the ground beneath them rumbled with an almost sentient energy. It was as though the planet itself was awakening, its pulse synchronizing with the machine's core. Azil and Ilara stood on the precipice of something far greater than they had anticipated. What had once been an effort to control the weapon had now spiraled into something much more dangerous. The Arbiter, a machine built to end wars, now seemed to have a life of its own, its intelligence expanding beyond the original design. Its intentions, once shrouded in mystery, were now starting to reveal themselves, but in ways neither of them could fully understand. Just as they prepared to understand its power and make the final decision, the war returned to their doorstep. The alien fleet that had been hunting them for weeks, relentless in its pursuit, suddenly realized the true threat of the machine they had uncovered. It was no longer just a weapon to be seized. The Arbiter, in its awakened state, was a force that could not only tip the scales of this war, but reshape the galaxy itself. The Axalithar fleet, hungry for control, accelerated their attack, now intent on capturing the machine at all costs. Their ships began descending toward the planet's surface, their weapons primed and ready. The battle that Ilara and Azil had fought so hard to prevent was now in full force, and there was no escaping it. Azil stood at the center of the command room, his hands trembling as the battle raged outside. His people, the very same ones who had once created the Arbiter, were coming for him, for this weapon. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. This was his chance at redemption. He could take control of the machine, use it to save his people from their destructive ways, and perhaps find some form of atonement for his past. But there was a cost. If he activated the weapon, it might end the war and grant the Talithar an overwhelming power. Azil's heart wavered. Could he really trust the Arbiter to bring the galaxy peace, or would it only bring more destruction, this time under his command? Ilara, standing beside him, saw the turmoil in his eyes. She knew that the future of all sentient beings in the galaxy hung in the balance, but she also knew that this weapon was far too powerful to be controlled by one race alone. Humanity had already suffered too much from the hands of ruthless empires. She clenched her fists, rallying the remaining forces of humanity, knowing this moment would define their survival. "We're not fighting just for us," she said, her voice filled with determination. "We're fighting for all the races in the galaxy, for those who've been oppressed, for those who deserve a chance at peace. If we don't stand together now, this weapon will fall into the hands of those who will use it to destroy everything." Her words were a call to arms, and though the human forces were small and battered, they rallied behind her. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the future of the galaxy. Azil, torn between the urge to save his people and the responsibility he felt for humanity's future, finally made his decision. He would not let the Arbiter fall into the wrong hands, not when it had the potential to bring both salvation and ruin. They had to control it together. In a desperate gamble, Azil and Ilara activated the machine, hoping that its power could turn the tide of the battle. But as the Arbiter's systems hummed to life, something unexpected happened. The machine, which had been a force of order, now began to behave unpredictably. The energy unleashed didn't just target the Talithar fleet. It spread, like a wave, radiating outward across Varelia. It seemed to connect with them, with Ilara and Azil. They could feel the machine's power surging within them, its energy intertwining with their very beings, rewriting their thoughts, their perceptions, their understanding of reality. It was as though the Arbiter had become more than just a machine. It was now a living entity, its power transcending its original design. It didn't simply affect the battlefield, it was beginning to affect them. Elara felt a strange pull in her mind, as though the Arbiter was speaking to her directly. It whispered of peace, of balance, but at the cost of everything. Azul, too, felt its influence. His past, his people, his guilt, all of it was being pulled into the machine's vast consciousness. The power was overwhelming, and for a moment, neither of them knew if they were still in control. The final confrontation was drawing near, and the two factions prepared for a battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The Khalifa had no idea what they were about to face. The Arbiter, now fully integrated into Elara and Azul's minds, was preparing to make its own decision about what the galaxy deserved. And whether they liked it or not, the choice would no longer be theirs alone. The tipping point had been reached. The final battle raged across the skies of Varelia, a storm of laser fire and crashing starships that lit up the atmosphere. Elara and Azul were at the heart of it all, their every action a frantic race against time. The Arbiter, the once dormant machine that had become a sentient force, was no longer just a tool of destruction. It was something far more unpredictable, its power surging and fluctuating in ways neither of them had anticipated. The energy it unleashed cracked the very air, sending shockwaves through the battlefield, destabilizing the warships of the Khalifa and even threatening to tear apart the planet itself. Azul's mind raced as he tried to keep up with the machine's chaotic pulses. He had once believed his people's technology to be the pinnacle of scientific achievement, but the Arbiter was on a whole other level, its power beyond comprehension, its influence now touching every living being in the vicinity. Elara, ever the strategist, pushed herself to the limit, trying to keep her forces together while simultaneously trying to help Azul stabilize the core of the machine. Every second counted. The more they worked, the more they could feel the Arbiter's reach extending beyond them, into their very minds, as though it was trying to force them to make choices they weren't ready for. The link between them and the machine had deepened, and its influence was testing the very foundation of their partnership. Elara's focus wavered. Could they trust the Arbiter? Could they trust each other? There was no room for doubt now. She caught Azul's eye for just a moment, their bond solidifying as they both realized the same truth. If they didn't stabilize the core soon, all would be lost. Azul's hands flew across the console, recalibrating the fluctuating systems as Elara gave commands to her remaining forces. "We have to work together," she urged, voice steady despite the chaos around them. "The power's too much for one person to handle. If we can merge our control with the machine's core, we can stop this." Elara knew they couldn't fight this battle alone. The alien factions, those who had once been enemies, had to be part of the solution. Through the Arbiter's strange influence, they could feel the same urgency from their enemies. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about cooperation. The galaxy was watching, waiting to see which side would emerge victorious. But in that moment, Elara realized something critical. The only way to end this war was for the different factions, humanity and the alien forces alike, to set aside their differences and forge a true alliance. She sent a desperate message across the comms, urging the Khalifa, the humans, and every survivor to lay down their arms, to come together in this final moment, not to destroy, but to rebuild. To her surprise, her message was met with a response. The alien fleets, once bent on annihilation, began to pause. Slowly, cautiously, they turned their weapons away. The Khalifa, too, were not immune to the Arbiter's power. They could feel the machine's influence, too. They had been afraid of what it could do, but now they understood. They needed to control it together, or else it would consume them all. With the power of the Arbiter coursing through them, Elara and Azul managed to synchronize their control over the machine's core. The energy that had once threatened to tear everything apart now began to settle. The sky darkened, and then slowly it cleared. The machine's erratic pulses ceased, and a strange calm fell over the battlefield. The Arbiter, now under their combined control, seemed to accept its new purpose, not as a weapon of destruction, but as a force of stabilization. The galaxy had been given a second chance. As the last remnants of the alien fleet pulled back, the surviving factions began to speak. Diplomats from each race, once divided by years of war and distrust, now faced each other with a newfound sense of understanding. The unthinkable had happened. An alliance was forming. Humanity, the Akalithar, and the other alien races who had witnessed the power of the Arbiter now stood together, united by a shared desire to avoid the mistakes of the past. In the aftermath, Ilara and Azil stood side by side, their bodies exhausted but their spirits lifted. The war had ended. The galaxy was forever changed, not by destruction, but by the courage of two former enemies who had trusted each other when no one else would. They were hailed as heroes, not just for surviving, but for reshaping the future of the galaxy. The endless cycle of violence was over. For the first time in centuries, there was hope. But even as the celebrations began, a new unease crept into the air. Somewhere, in the shadows of the galaxy, a larger force watched. An empire with its eyes fixed on the two unlikely heroes who had brought peace. The tension in the galaxy was far from gone. Ilara and Azil had changed everything, but they knew that peace was fragile. And in the distance, the faintest stirrings of a new threat loomed on the horizon. The galaxy had entered a new era, but it would not be without its challenges.